Hello, I'm Eric Hutchinson. I'm the principal broker and owner of Hutchinson Realty. Welcome to video 15 of the Negotiating Your Next Home video series. I hope you'll watch the other videos in the series because we've talked about a large plethora of topics. We've talked about financing, we have talked about loan and closing costs, we have talked about home warranties, we have talked about home inspections, we have talked about contingencies. We have talked about earnest money and non-refundable deposit. We have talked about the closing date and the benefits of possibly giving the seller time to get out of the property after closing, which is what we call delayed occupancy. We have talked about item number 30, which is the big blank that realtors write things into the property, like cleaning your house. We've talked about expiration date. There are so many things that we have talked about. So I hope you'll watch the other videos in the series. But today we are continuing our talk and our discussion about negotiating your next home from the buyer's perspective. Now, if you are a buyer and you have submitted an offer or a contract offer on a piece of property through your realtor to the listing realtor who presents it to the seller, then you may get a what we call a seller's counter offer. Now, we are in an extreme seller's market right now, and there are usually multiple offers on houses. And so if you are in a multiple offer situation and you get a seller's counter offer, that's a really good thing. That means the seller wants to negotiate with you, but you need to really act quickly because the seller can withdraw that counter before you sign that counter. And that's a really big deal. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. Just like you can withdraw your offer before the seller accepts that offer. So just want to keep that in mind as we move forward. So I'm going to go over to the seller's counter form that we have. So you're seeing on screen a seller's counter offer. Now, this is what the seller would use to respond to your contract if you're the buyer. In fact, you notice at the very top of your left hand of the screen on your left hand side over here, it says the real estate contract form serial number, and it names the serial number of the contract that you had your realtor present to the listing agent, to the seller. So we put that serial number on there to attach the forms, the documents, because you don't want to get confused with other contracts or other forms. And so there's a serial number for each form. This form actually has a serial number in the top left-hand corner. You see in blue, it says form serial number, but then right below that, it says the real estate contract form serial number, and it names that serial number, and then it names the buyer and the seller. And it says that the real estate contract is not accepted in its present form, and therefore this seller's counter is being offered. And then below that, the realtor should write in there the item numbers on the contract that the seller does not agree with, okay? The items that are not listed on this page are the items that the seller does agree with, but the items that are listed on this page are the items that the seller does not agree with. Probably the most popular item is the purchase price, which is item 3A. That's why I've got it on this form. Item 3A, purchase price to be. And then if the seller's not happy with your purchase price offer, they could submit a counter offer that says this is what they want you to pay for their property. And then I've thrown in a couple other common items that sellers sometimes counter on the real estate contract. So look at item number 13, flat screen TVs and attached, flat screen TVs that are attached to the walls do not convey with the property. Now, let me just stop there real quick. So item 13 on the real estate contract is fixtures and attached equipment. And it basically says that anything that's nailed, bolted, or screwed to the property stays with the property. Now, a lot of times in the seller's disclosure or in the MLS, the seller will ask the listing agent to type in there that they are not going to leave the flat screen TVs, or they are going to take with them a chandelier, or they're going to take with them some other attached thing in the property. And that's great that they disclose that. However, the contract supersedes the disclosures. For instance, a seller may say, hey, I'm going to take the refrigerator with me, may say that at the listing time period, but then the buyer says, I'm going to pay you $3,000 above the list price if you'll throw in the refrigerator. And the seller goes, okay, I'll agree to that. They sign the contract. And even though the seller said he was taking the refrigerator with him, the contract is written after that time period, and it's an agreement between the buyer and the seller, and they've signed it. It becomes legal. Then the refrigerator goes with the buyer or stays with the property. So a lot of times flat screen TVs are a point of contention. There's this really nice OLED TV that's in the living room. It's attached to the wall. And the buyer goes, wow, I would really like for that to stay with the property. And so the buyer doesn't even have to write it into the contract, because item 13 says that anything nailed, bolted, or screwed to the property stays with the property. So sometimes there's a disagreement of whether or not the flat screen TV stays with the house or not. Even if the seller has disclosed that he's taking that OLED with him, if in the contract it's not dealt with, then according to item 13, fixtures and attached equipment stay with the house. And so that's why if you are a realtor representing a seller, then you should counter that to make sure that the buyer knows that flat screen TV does not stay. So that's a common mistake or common problem that we sometimes have. Look at item 15B that says seller will not pay for a home warranty. Sometimes buyers ask for a home warranty, and sometimes sellers don't agree with that. So they may counter the home warranty. Item 22, the closing date, another really common thing that the buyer doesn't normally know when the seller wants to close on a real estate contract. So they just put in there when they want to close, and the seller goes, no, I don't think so. I want to close on this other date. And so I put in there a counter to item 22. So I hope that makes sense. Anything that the seller doesn't agree to, they're going to write on the seller's counter this item number that they don't agree with, and they're going to put in a counter to that. Now, if you notice down below the blank, it says other terms, and then it says right to accept other offers. Now, I really want you to perk up your ears here and listen, because this basically says that the seller can decide to take another contract if you don't sign this one in a certain time frame. So it's really important that if you are okay with what the seller is countering, that you accept this counter and have your agent send it over to the listing agent as soon as possible, notifying them that you have accepted the contract and we have what we call an executed contract. So if you don't do that, the seller may get a higher offer and decide to withdraw their counter offer and accept a contract. That's a really big deal. So you need to make sure that if you want this property, that the seller has countered your offer and you're okay with it, that you sign it as soon as possible and have your realtor send it over to the listing agent immediately. That's really important. And if you notice above my head, it says expiration of the counter, and you give the seller so long, the seller gives you so long to accept this counter offer. But if you don't sign it and they get another offer, they could accept another contract. So just be careful about that. I hope this has been informative to you, and we've about run out of time. So again, you can email me at info@hutchrealty.com. You can visit our website at hutchrealty.com, where you can view every listing in Northwest Arkansas. If you're a seller, you can also get a free home evaluation right from our website. So thanks again for listening to my video. I hope you guys will tune in next week as we continue our discussion of negotiating your next home. Have a blessed day.